Gonna lay down my heavy load. Down by the riverside. Oh, yes. Down by the riverside. You know. Down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my heavy load. Down by the riverside. To steady water.
Woody Wolf was the type of person who the neighborhood would go sit around his campfire at night. And he would like to say he knows more history than that society across the street. But he knew I was involved with a hysterical society, as of course Woody would call it. So maybe you know something about the history of Friendship Park. And I said, why, yes, because we're all taught. In 1971 or 2, the first city park was Friendship, and he said, no, before that. And I said, what? What do you mean? He goes, before that, when it was the club. And I said, Woody, what are you talking about? And he said, back when it was the Black Club, back at Friendship Park. And I'm looking at him like I have never heard this. And it turns out Woody had worked at the club when he was a kid. So he would tell me a couple stories. Woody, I'm gonna look into this, but I've never seen it in our history books or our lessons. I'm gonna see what I can dig up. So I asked the obvious people what you do. I asked the Historical Society, and no one had heard anything. They just said, oh, you've been talking to Woody. I asked City Hall, because it was now city land. Like, you guys ever hear this? Yeah, we heard the story, but we look for information and there isn't any. Like, how can there not be? So I started looking, and they were right. There wasn't any in the normal places you and I would look. The Dispatch, the Columbus newspapers, the Gahanna newspapers, looking in libraries, looking on websites, not going to find any information, and I wasn't, and I was getting frustrated. However, we did find out there were a couple African-American newspapers in Columbus at that time. I think it was the Ohio History Center, had the Ohio State News, dating back to 1944. I said, I'll take it, give me the microfilm. So I got this microfilm back to 44 and said, I'm gonna look for something. I didn't know the name. I didn't really know when it started or when it was happening, so I just went as far back as I could, scrolling through microfilm, and I remember the first time I saw it in print. There was an advertisement for the Big Walnut Country Club. And it's hard to imagine, but 20 years ago, we didn't even know what the name was.
It is a special moment to be in the park that we call today Friendship Park. And it's interesting that they named it Friendship Park because it originally was known as the Big Walnut Country Club. This was a very special environment and space for the Afro-American community back in the 1920s and 30s and 40s and so forth. And at that time, because of segregation, a number of our leaders in Columbus, Dr. Ninrod Allen, Dr. Calloway, Dr. Woodland, these individuals were all leaders of our community, and they wanted for their families places where they could come and enjoy the summer, have summer camps, enjoy the recreation of that time and place to meet. So they created this very unique and very special place here in Gahanna called the Big Walnut Country Club.
After being extremely frustrated at the beginning of all this research and hitting dead ends and brick walls and running into nothing, I had found some articles. I thought I knew the name of this place. And I went to this meeting for local historical societies. And everybody gets to talk a little bit about what they're doing. And so when it was over, I went up to talk to this woman who had said she was working with children in the Mount Vernon Avenue community, recording like local histories. So I thought I'll ask. And I said, ma'am, hi, I'm Christy, I'm with Gahanna, and I think there was a club for African Americans. It's where Friendship Park is now, and I wondered if you'd heard of it. And I'll never forget, this woman looked at me and straightened up and kind of tapped her little foot and said, heard of it? I was queen in 1952.
For me, the special memory was when I was a teenager. One of the activities they had every year was a beauty contest that was sponsored at that time by the Ohio State News, was a black newspaper. In my 17th year, I was asked to be one of those contestants. And it was very special to me because all teenagers are somewhat insecure and shy, and to have one of those business persons say that they would be my sponsor. That year, this insecure little young teenager, I won. So this park and this community has a very special place in my memory because of that.
And that's when I met Rita, who I continue to call Queen Rita. And lucky for us, this beauty queen of 1952 grew up to be an avid local historian, beautiful person, and wonderful friend. And that's another great thing to come out of this project.
But then that gave me the confidence and sense of self-esteem. Because sadly enough, when I was in high school, certain activities you just knew not to try for, such as being a cheerleader or those kinds of things. You just knew the black girls weren't going to be a part of that. There's no mistakes in the Lord's plan. He's preparing you for something that you're going to do later. So about 10 years after that contest, I was interviewed and hired into the banking industry as that first female black person to address the hiring of black individuals. I think that beauty contest of 1952 prepared that little teenage girl to address the civil rights era of the 60s. People denied us, but we were creative. So what is that? You give us lemons and we make lemonade. And that's what Walnut Country Club represents. You denied us a place to take our families, so we created a space for our families.
It took me years to kind of put this together, that Rita and I are kind of the perfect team to tackle this topic, because between the two of us, we kind of are like that club. She's Columbus, I'm Gahanna. She's urban, I'm just a country kid. She's sophisticated, she's black, I'm white. She went to the club, and I just happened to live where it was. We are that club teamed up to bring this story together, and I'm really grateful to have met her and that we can be a team. Oh, and there's this image I have in my head of the bulldozers that cleared the way for our fabulous new Friendship Park. It's wonderful, but overnight, the bulldozers came in and took out all the bushes, all the trees, all the remnants of a long-defunct club, is what it said in the paper. And there's nothing left. And in my mind, I always picture this story being bulldozed with it. And by the time I'm talking to Woody and I'm meeting Rita, it's kind of ready to teeter into the creek. And all these little pieces were just pulling it back. And I say it's from the brink of the creek. And I feel like the history is saved now. I feel like never again will someone look for information on the Big Walnut Country Club and not find anything. There's a marker, there's stories, there's websites. We've saved it from going completely away.
Any of these trees may have been here when it was the Walnut Country Club. And the roots of that tree go deep, but the branches branch out. And if we're connected to the trunk of the tree, then we're strong. And that's the way our community was. Then when the leaves fall, they nourish the ground, and that nourishes the roots. So it's a complete circle. And so our children need to know where they come from, the strength. They need to know about Dr. Calloway. They need to know about Nimrod Allen. They need to know about Dr. Trivett. They need to know about all those individuals that planted the tree, planted the seed for them to succeed and to build on. I have an issue about Columbus's Lucas Sullivan and its own history. We don't know about the Neals. We don't know about the Deschlers. Those individuals built Columbus. Our children need to know that. So it isn't about Black history. It isn't about white history. It's about America history. It's about our stories and how we're all here today.
I ain't gonna study